easy, oh. Lesson time, baby. Oh, so easy, oh. Country African boy. Oh, so easy, oh. I like that.
What's up, y'all? I'm Lex-Jordan Ibegbu, and thanks for tuning in to Wahala Talk. Today, we have a very special guest, an attorney, an activist, an at-large Raleigh City Council member, Mr. Jonathan Melton. How are you doing today, Jonathan?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing very well, and I'm so glad and appreciative that you took the time to be here on Wahala Talk today. So we'll go ahead and get it going because I know you're running back and forth in downtown today. So first question, as of recently, you know that $80 million bond was passed here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and about 12 million of that is going to so that Raleigh can buy land so as to use for affordable housing. But will that elicit real change in a market where the average house is upwards of 400,000?
Yeah, so I don't think that there's like a silver bullet for addressing housing affordability and affordable housing. I think what we have to do is one, try to do things differently than they've been done in the past, because I'm certain we're not going to get ourselves out of this mess doing things the exact same way. And I think two, I think we have to attack the problem from a variety of ways. And, you know, a big part of the cost of housing is the cost of land, especially in a place like Raleigh, where so many people are moving here and we only have a finite amount of land. You can't make more land. And so making sure that we're able to purchase land in strategic areas to preserve the affordability, I do think that will be important. And I know that the city is looking at finding land, acquiring land near schools, along transit corridors, places where we would need the housing the most, and making sure that we can own it and then control the affordability and control what is built there. So I know that that is one piece of the pie.
And given that so many people from out of state are moving to Raleigh, you know, affordability is a transient term. Will this be affordable for the average income of someone who is coming here with a college education, or a resident who has been here for generations and who may not have that same type of career path?
Yeah, well, I think that's a good point. You said it's transient because affordability is relative, right? Because there are folks that move here from California and think that everything in Raleigh is very affordable. But then you have folks who maybe grew up here, went to college here, or long-term residents and have seen the cost of living increase. And so I think affordability is relative. I know that with affordable housing, capital A, capital H, to qualify for affordable housing, you're looking at 80% area median income. That's not affordable for a lot of people. 80% area median income is probably folks that are, you know, have college degrees starting out in their career, you know, maybe like your nurses and teachers and other, you know, working young professionals. Then there are folks that need like deeply affordable, subsidized places to live. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have folks that don't qualify for a subsidy, that just need an attainable house, a cost of living. So I do think that the question of affordability is a matter of perspective. And I think we're trying to address affordability at all different price points. Our affordable housing bond, for example, mandated that a certain portion goes to 30% AMI or less. The city already owns some land, little pieces of land, big pieces of land throughout the city that have been vacant for a really long period of time. We have recently moved those into production for workforce housing and emergency housing, so that would be deeply affordable. But then on the other side of it, taking it away from the capital A, capital H, affordable housing, subsidized housing, just general housing affordability, trying to make sure folks can get into home ownership or an affordable rental. That's where we're doing a lot of our like zoning changes, looking at missing middle housing, townhomes and duplexes and quadplexes, and just overall trying to reduce the cost of housing. So I think that affordable really does come down to who you ask, and we need to be doing everything we can to make housing affordable at every level, but certainly for the folks who need it most.
Definitely. And you talk about zoning changes. We know that you support alternative zoning solutions such as commercial units, accessory
Yes.
commercial units. So how will these empower citizens here in Raleigh?
Well, you know, things like accessory commercial units, which are allowing folks to operate a business on part of their property. These were things that were legal for a really long time. Before zoning laws from the past, you know, several decades really divided up the city into this is where you'll live, this is where you'll work, this is where you'll shop. And it led to an increase in costs, increase in car dependency. And so I'm trying to make it easier to get what you need closer to where you live. So you don't have to own a car. You don't have to rely on public transportation. Easier to walk to or bike to what you need. And so an accessory commercial unit, I think, is one tool towards that goal. There are things that used to exist in the past that still exist in some cities and that they're working in those cities. Like I said, I don't know that we have an absolute solution to these problems, but I don't think we're going to find the solution doing things the exact same way. And if we can try to bring down some burdens, loosen our zoning laws, allow some commercial uses back into our residential areas, put goods and services closer to people, allow people to earn an income on their own property with a business or selling goods, I'm willing to give it a try. And so I think allowing things to happen is one thing, incentivizing the community to do it is another thing. I think first we have to make it legal. And then second, I think we should look towards how do we incentivize folks to create small businesses, sell products, to open stores and shops, and help reduce that car dependency, food deserts in some areas, et cetera.
Definitely, we have to make the opportunity and the success rate of small businesses feasible. Now, you talk about making the city less car dependent. Now, we know that in Raleigh, and this isn't limited to Raleigh, North Carolina, and all over the South, there's a limited bus system, which is a consequence of southern states and also a consequence of segregation. And as of recently, we had a failed light rail. So, is this wish to make Raleigh less car dependent really feasible, given all of those barriers and that long history?
Regarding the transit system, I do think it is getting better and it will get better. And several years ago, voters passed the Wake County Transit Plan, which is increasing bus service and frequency, and it's going to fund things. You mentioned the failed light rail project, which was Durham-Chapel Hill. Raleigh is about to break ground in the next several months on the first bus rapid transit corridor, which for all intents and purposes looks like light rail. It's one of the articulated buses, so the double buses that are connected, raised platform, queue priority, signal jumping, runs in its own lane. Basically looks like a train, but it's a bus. We'll have 4 of those lines coming out, increasing frequency of our regular city buses, adding more bus shelters, more benches. And so I do think that transit is improving and will continue to improve. I'm also interested in alternative transportation, like increasing connectivity through sidewalks and bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. We brought back scooters. That's a form of micromobility. So whatever we can do to attack the problem, to give people more options to get around, that's what I'm trying to do.
Understandable. Now, you're also on the city council, and you're the chair of the Economic Development and Innovation Committee. And we see other cities like Miami, they're doing a lot with Bitcoin so as to bring innovation, not just to businesses, but also to the people. Now, Raleigh talks a lot about bringing innovation and being front-facing forward, but will this innovation go to the people, or will it simply go to RTP and the businesses and the out-of-towners who are coming here?
Yeah, good question. I'd like to think it's going to the people. Like, I want to be a forward-thinking, progressive, welcoming city. And a lot of the stuff that we work on in my committee, Economic Development and Innovation, it is sort of ground up. We work with the Downtown Raleigh Alliance, which are working with the small business owners who own the storefronts in the city already, folks who are shopping downtown, the folks who live in the city, what they need and what they want. And we've done, I think, some people-oriented shifts already. Some of it was a result of COVID. I think we learned some best practices from COVID about how folks enjoy the outdoor dining, the more ability to use spaces, not just for parking cars, but to eat outside, to shop outside. And so we've been making some of those changes and making them on a permanent basis, working with the small business community. What do they need? We just did an entire public realm study, finding different programs that we can fund. Some of the vacant storefronts downtown, one of them the city owns, is going to be a startup incubator, for minority-owned businesses. It's going to be like a test kitchen. And so that, when you think of innovation, I think you can take it in multiple ways. I think a lot of people think about technology, right? Or Bitcoin, as you mentioned. And we're working on some of that stuff too. But some of the innovation we're working on here in my committee is innovative ways of doing things to help people, innovative ways to change how the city is being run and the programs we have and where our money is being spent. So I'm really excited about that work.
Definitely. Now, we know that North Carolina is an independent state. Raleigh is a city with its own mind, but obviously we live in America. So, federal legislation affects us. So how will Biden's Build Back Better plan and the infrastructure package affect Raleigh, and how will it be used by the city council?
Well, it's going to have a great effect on the city of Raleigh. The best example I can give is what we've already been able to do with the American Rescue Plan Fund. We've been able to buy a hotel to address homelessness. We've been able to invest in local nonprofits. Just the other meeting, we granted $1 million to nonprofits that work with folks who are chronically homeless, youth, elderly, folks who are disabled. And I know the Build Back Better plan has, investments in infrastructure. It'll help us get commuter rail up and running faster. Again, reducing car dependency. It'll help get broadband, not just in Raleigh, but our surrounding communities. And like you said, we are our own city, but we have to think globally. We have to think regionally. We're only as strong as the region. And if we've got areas that don't have access to broadband, then that's going to affect our ability to attract talent to the city as well. The Build Back Better plan has a ton of stuff in it that would be truly transformative for the city of Raleigh for addressing housing needs and transit needs and infrastructure needs.
Most definitely. Now, you spoke about homelessness. Raleigh didn't have previously the amount of homelessness that, say, a DC or Atlanta had. But as the housing market continues to balloon and the movement of people into the city shifts, we see more homelessness. So how will the city of Raleigh deal with this issue?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, we got to keep people in houses, right? So there's like a stream, a timeline of what's happening. And part of it is we've got some long-term residents who can't afford to stay in their houses, and that's not helping the problem. So speaking of our affordable housing bond, there is money in there for owner-occupied rehabilitation, helping people make repairs to their homes. They can stay in their homes and they don't get priced out. That's going to help. Again, we're trying to attack the problem from multiple ways. For example, we didn't have a city policy about housing choice vouchers before. There's a lot of folks who are in shelters or on the street that may have qualified for a housing choice voucher. They can't find any place that will take it. Now, in the city of Raleigh, if you are getting any sort of tax, credit financing, subsidy to build the housing project, if you're getting a land conveyed below fair market value, we have a piece of property we just sold to $1 to the Raleigh Area Land Trust, you're going to be required to take housing choice vouchers. You cannot discriminate from source of income. And so I hope that will help as well. But I do agree, it is a growing problem. And I think that we have to address all parts of the problem along the spectrum, starting with keeping folks who already have housing in their houses, all the way to helping folks who don't have housing get access to housing, whether it's from making sure more places take vouchers, making sure more units are built, or supporting the agencies that are doing the work already, like CASA and Salvation Army and folks like that.
Yes, it is a multi-tiered phenomena. Now, as of recently, due to political polarization, LGBTQIA rights have been under attack, and they've been even under attack within the state of North Carolina. And you're a part of some very well-informed organizations, such as the Stonewall Sports. What are organizations that you are a part of and similar ones doing to combat this seemingly unnecessary onslaught on LGBTQIA rights in the city and in the state?
So in Raleigh and in North Carolina, but especially in Raleigh, there are a lot of great organizations. I think each of them sort of have their own role or are filling their own, void. Stonewall Sports, for example, I think does a lot of community building. So that's like a supportive community building, creating safe spaces type organization. Also raises money for other nonprofits. We work with the Lgbt Center of Raleigh, which is a fantastic Lgbt center, wraparound services from housing to mental health to education, healthcare. It's sort of a one-stop shop. You go there and get triaged to the services that you need, as well as building a sense of community. Then you've got like Equality North Carolina, which is doing statewide advocacy on policy changes. They're the ones that are leading with trying to get non-discrimination ordinances passed across the state. And we just worked with Equality North Carolina and Wake County to pass a non-discrimination ordinance prohibiting discrimination in public accommodations and private employment. So I think we are really fortunate in Raleigh that we are sort of a, progressive bubble, sometimes in a sea of red. And we have these organizations that are helping the community, helping raise awareness, providing supportive services, and advocating for change.
Sometimes that bubble, or sometimes that one lone light can lead the rest in the right direction.
Now,
Now,
right.
you also raise money with the North Carolina AIDS Action Network. And we
Yes.
see in the South especially that there is a disparity between the contraction rate for HIV and AIDS amongst people of color, Black and Brown communities, and the white community. So what can be done to change this?
Yeah, so that's something that really what called me to start fundraising for the NCA's Action Network. I knew their former executive director, they need access to funds to raise awareness, to advocate for policy change, and to provide those resources that you mentioned. And so I think it's an advocacy, education, and access issue. And I know that there's a lot more that can be done. I believe a lot more could be done if we would expand, Medicaid in North Carolina. But for the time being, having an organization like NCAN, NCA's Action Network, that is lobbying in DC and locally for policy changes, for access to resources, and to raise awareness. And there's also a stigma. There is a stigma. It's getting better, but you can't help folks if they don't, feel comfortable stepping forward to accept the help or the education. And we have to do more, I think, to break the barrier, remove the stigma, and to be able to provide supportive services.
So from your purview, is this simply, along with the issue of stigma, is this simply an issue of enough money not being allocated to certain communities, or is it simply people not having knowledge and coming forward due to education?
I'm not sure. Based on what I understand, I think it's not just alone with HIV. I think not allocating resources to, traditionally, Black communities or communities that have been traditionally disinvested in, that is a holistic problem. It's not just HIV infection problem, it's access to healthcare, period. And so I think that groups like NCAN are doing a good job of lifting all. And so, they're advocating for the HIV education and funding and supportive services. But along with that, they're shining a light on, probably parts of the community that need more holistic help as well.
Understandable. Now, you previously alluded to food deserts, and we know that, there has been a push to eliminate food deserts in Raleigh's Black and Brown communities, primarily the downtown and Southeast and East Raleigh corridors. But with this progress, as gentrification also progresses and pushes these communities out, how do we stop these food deserts from really just moving to other portions of the Raleigh community?
Right. I don't know the answer to that question. I wish I did. I think if someone had come up with the answer to that question, we would all just be replicating it. Talking about things like accessory commercial units, corner stores, which I know at times get a bad reputation because some of the really obvious bad examples are still on the ground and they have some less than good qualities. But if you look at from just a policy standpoint, anything we can do to introduce food into areas that don't have access to food is going to be helpful. So whether that's a corner store that can sell groceries, whether it's accessory commercial unit or community gardens, which we just loosened the regulations on, I think we need to try all of it. Because you're right, sometimes a grocery store won't open until after there's been a high degree of displacement in an area. And so folks who were longtime residents who had no access or had to drive really far to get a grocery store, suddenly new development comes in, new grocery store comes in, and then no long-term residents live there anymore. That's a problem. That can't be the solution. And I think the solution needs to be engaging the community in discussions on how we can help, and then empowering the community to step forward and help fill the void as well. So if we regulate it to where an accessory commercial unit can be on the ground, a corner store can be on the ground, or a community garden can be on the ground, then what can we do to work with the community to bring the needs of the community make sure that they're met by the people who already live there. So that's the piece I think we got to jump to next. We're doing the zoning reform now, and then we got to pivot to, all right, now it's allowed. How do we make it helpful?
We have to make it helpful, definitely. So last question, Jonathan. You're a political star. So what do you see on the horizon for yourself? And what do you want to affect? What change do you want to affect in Raleigh and the greater North Carolina community?
Well, I'm focused on Raleigh right now. I have announced I'm going to run for re-election again. It'll be next fall. And a lot of the things I ran on for my first term, we've been able to accomplish. Short-term rentals, accessory dwelling units, alternative transportation, some zoning reform efforts to allow different housing types. But I think we can do a lot more. And we need to make sure, like we've talked about, that some of the policies we've been able to implement actually take effect and that are helpful to the community. So moving forward for the next couple of years, I really want to work to address housing affordability and affordable housing, create that 15-minute city where you don't need a car to get around, where you can get what you need within 15 minutes of your house, or if you do need to travel, you've got a better, well-connected, high-frequency and reliable transit service option. So that's what I am focused on. I want to continue to build different housing types, focusing on those who are most vulnerable, all the way up to folks who just need something affordable that they can buy, reducing car dependency, and trying to place goods and services closer.
Definitely. Well, we look forward to seeing this 15-minute city come to fruition. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan. It's been a pleasure talking to you and seeing your vision and hearing about what all you have done for the city of Raleigh. The city of Raleigh appreciates you. And hopefully we can have another conversation in person and more in depth next time. But until then, thanks for tuning in to Wahala Talk, and peace.
Country African boy.